New stepmother chose me as maid of honor, but her daughter humiliated me at the wedding. So I pressed charges to take back my dignity. Ahead of the ceremony, I planned to surprise my new stepmother by getting to the hotel early carrying her something blue. She chose me to be her maid of honor rather than her own daughter Alicia, whom I had never met, and our friendship had grown since she and my dad started dating. Even with her unkempt extensions and artificial tan, I knew her the second she stepped through the door. I was unaware that I was going to become her new sister because I had shed 60 pounds and gone blonde instead of brunette since my dad had shared our last family photo. "Excuse me, what on earth are you doing in here?" she demanded, her distaste evident as she surveyed me from head to toe. She yelled out, "Girls, we have a problem." Some strange woman had broken into the suite, and I was about to explain how she had gotten past security. I was about to add, when she abruptly interrupted me. To be honest, I was curious to observe my new stepsister's character before she found out who I was. "Oh my God, check out your dress," Alicia exclaimed as she stalked me with a predatory stride. "Did you get that at Goodwill?" It's so pathetic when poor people try to sneak into nice events. You probably saw the wedding announcement online and thought you could pretend to belong here. 2 additional bridesmaids arrived, and she said, "Look at this tragic woman trying to blend in with that awful dress and those palest shoes. It's actually sad." Upon learning that I was indeed attending the wedding, she exclaimed with a mischievous grin, "You're not on the guest list. I'm the bride's daughter, and I know every single person invited. You're probably one of those psycho wedding crashers who tries to steal gifts or food. What's your scam? Pretending to be someone's +1. Alicia's entourage began filming me with their phones, and I quickly realized that this video documenting my humiliation would remain online in perpetuity if I revealed my identity. The pearl necklace that belonged to my late mother clattered across the floor when she snatched my purse from the table and threw it out. "Let's see what you're trying to steal." "Oh look. Cheap drugstore makeup and a phone with a cracked screen. Definitely not someone who belongs at a $100,000 wedding." She proceeded to kick my mother's jewelry while muttering, "Fake pearls too. How embarrassing." As I knelt down to retrieve them, she crushed my palm. She proclaimed, "Security is on their way," without having contacted anybody else. "But first, tell us who you really are. My new stepsister Iris is supposed to be here, and you're taking up space meant for actually important people. Are you obsessed with the groom? Did you see my mom with her rich fiancé and decide to ruin their day?" I tripped over the champagne table after she shoved me backward. I wanted to say, "I'm Iris." But the thought of saying it lodged in my throat as I saw her cruelly summon my name. Even if my friend mentioned that maybe I was just confused, Alicia's anger just grew. "Don't defend her. She's probably mentally ill. Look at her. She's not even denying it. She's just standing there like a creep." She stepped in front of me and said, "Iris is the maid of honor. And when she gets here, we're going to laugh about the crazy woman who tried to infiltrate the wedding." She proceeded to shake a bottle of champagne that she had picked up. She popped it and sprayed it all over me, soaking my dress and hair completely. "You know what? You need to learn what happens to wedding crashers," she said. "Oops, now you really look like trash. Street trash covered in alcohol. Perfect." The other girls giggled and snapped pictures as I stood there, wet, and worried about my dad's reaction if I made a fuss just before his ceremony. After I still hadn't left, she rang the hotel's security. "We have an intruder in the penthouse bridal suite. She's unstable and refusing to leave. She's probably dangerous. Might be on drugs. Please hurry." She gave me a smirk and added, "They're going to arrest you. This is a felony. Trespassing and attempted theft. Your life is about to be ruined." She approached me with scissors in hand and said, "Actually, let's make sure you can never crash another wedding." With a firm grip on my hair, she severed a portion of it. "There. Now you appear just as insane on the outside as you are on the inside. I will inform Iris, the real maid of honor, about my ordeal of rescuing the wedding from a disturbed individual who threatened to harm someone, when she arrives." I couldn't even begin to describe how shocked I was at this point. Just then, the door to the next room swung open, and my stepmother, all dolled up in her robe and with her makeup and hair done to perfection, stepped out. "Iris, look who it is. I was wondering when my maid of honor would show up. My darling, what happened to your hair?" Alicia stood between us, her expression turning pale as she realized she had just attacked her future stepsister. Her hands remained gripping the scissors and my chopped hair. My stepmother's body tensed up as her gaze shifted from the scissors to the clump of blonde hair on the floor, and then back to my severed skull. Rushing across the room, she snatched my face and turned my head to examine my scalp for cuts, leaving Alicia still with my hair entangled in her fingers. My every step was accompanied by the sound of tiny splashes as the champagne that had been dripping down my dress collected on the white carpet. At first, I couldn't hear my stepmother's murmur as she trembled her fingers over the hard spots where Alicia had chopped my hair. Then she raised her voice and asked, "What did you do to Iris?" My name was uttered in a cracking voice. Alicia's jaw clenched and clenched again, but no sound from her lips. At that moment, I was afraid she could lose control of the scissors in her hand. With their phones still in their hands, but no longer recording, Rachel and Sophia both retreated toward the door. My dad must have heard the commotion because he stepped out of his tuxedo, bow tie undone, and sporting a broad grin that quickly faded as soon as he laid eyes on me. All of a sudden, he took it all in, my drenched hair, Alicia's scissors, and his wife, who was beginning to cry, all of it. He began to approach me and inquired, "Iris, my darling, are you hurt?" Nevertheless, my stepmother had already begun to examine my scalp once more. She turned to face Alicia before I could react, and her voice became unusually harsh. When she said, "Explain yourself right now," Alicia found her voice and began speaking so rapidly that her sentences ran together. While Nina kept looking around as if she wanted to vanish, Rachel stealthily reached into her purse and placed her phone inside. She kept saying she didn't know it was me, that she thought I was breaking in, that I looked different and wouldn't say who I was. I watched as David, the wedding planner, arrived in his immaculate gray suit, and I could see that his professional grin froze as he took everything in. Quickly retrieving his phone, he began messaging someone as he cautiously made his way farther into the room to evaluate the damage. He whispered, "We need to push the ceremony back," before screaming it out when nobody listened. David was instructed by my stepmother to contact hotel security immediately after my stepmother gently removed the scissors from Alicia's hand and placed them on the cosmetics table. With her fingers returning to my hair to assess the extent of the damage, she led me to the couch and seated me down. I could see her attempting to hold back tears as her shaking fingertips brushed against the incisions. Alicia regained consciousness and began to pace frantically as she explained that everything had been a total misunderstanding. Everyone would have acted similarly if they believed someone was trying to break into their mom's wedding, she said, and I should have told her my identity. She also said that I was acting strangely. Even though Alicia had taken her hands off the scissors, my dad's expression grew increasingly menacing as he stepped in front of us, shielding me from harm. The hotel security guard, Albert, showed up sooner than I had anticipated. This towering figure in the black uniform surveyed the room and promptly assumed command. After he reassured everyone to remain calm, he began rearranging furniture in the suite, placing Alicia by the window while I remained on the couch with my stepmother and dad. With his arrival, the atmosphere in the room shifted. What had been a simple family dispute now transformed into a potential police matter. When Albert wanted to know what had transpired, I found the courage to speak up. I hadn't since my stepmother entered. Saying, "I want to file a complaint for assault," I observed Alicia's face turn white. Without hesitation, she began to weep. "I couldn't do this. Not today. Not on her mom's wedding day." My stepmother closed her eyes as if in physical anguish, stuck between doing what was right and protecting her daughter from the consequences of her dreadful actions. Rachel and Emma gave Albert a slow nod as he asked if they had seen what had happened. Not only did he want to know whether anyone had filmed anything, but he also asked them not to leave since he would need their statements. It slipped my mind that Emma was reaching for her handbag, but Albert was also aware of the movement. Coming closer to Albert, David began to murmur something about the urgent necessity to handle the vendor calls. I could see that his phone was already beeping constantly, and that he had a growing number of messages. He approached the window and began to make a series of calls, explaining that the sound system was experiencing technical difficulties in a calm and professional manner. Turning to me, Albert wanted to know if I had any injuries that needed to be recorded. I extended my hand, revealing the spot where Alicia had trodden, and demonstrated the crimson bruises that covered my knuckles to him. Next, I retrieved my mother's pearl necklace from its previous resting place on the floor and brought attention to the scratches that had not been present earlier. Using his phone, Albert snapped pictures of my hand from various perspectives, zooming in on the broken pearls. He inquired about the necklace's value and made notes in a little notebook regarding the property damage. It belonged to my late mother, so I told him it was valuable, but the insurance company only gave it about $3,000 worth. I overheard David mentioning that guests were already making their way downstairs as he continued on the phone informing someone that the ceremony would begin 90 minutes later than scheduled. Gently inquiring as to my well-being and whether I required medical assistance, my father drew nearer to me and rested his hand on my shoulder. After I shook my head, my stepmother approached David and politely requested some privacy for us. She escorted me to a secluded area of the room close to the restroom door as the others continued with their work. She continued delicately caressing my damaged hair while her eyes welled up with tears. She wanted to know what I needed from her right now, so I told her the truth. Alicia shouldn't get away with assault on a wedding day. She should face serious consequences. I could sense my stepmother's pain as she nodded slowly. Still, she comprehended. Albert moved directly in front of Alicia and raised his hand as she began to approach us from across the room. He informed her that she couldn't approach the victim because she needed to keep her distance while the inquiry was underway. Alicia's cheeks flushed as she began to scream that I was intentionally hurting her mother by destroying everything, and that this was absurd. Evidently avoiding any association with the tantrum, Rachel drew away from her companion and shifted uneasily. In a low voice, Emma approached Albert and gently tapped his arm to get his attention. After telling him she needed to show him something essential, she took out her phone. She showed him the screen after unlocking it, and I watched as she explained that she had taped the entire event from the moment I entered. Regardless of their friendship, she was prepared to publish the footage as proof that Alicia had done something wrong. As if unable to comprehend the treachery, Alicia gazed at Emma with her jaw agape. With perspiration beading on his forehead, David returned to the group after ending yet another call. According to his announcement, we had a maximum of 1 hour to postpone the ceremony before we would permanently lose our venue slot. The reception hall was already booked for another wedding after hours, so there was no room for further postponement. As my stepmother considered whether to cancel or delay the wedding, her worried expression betrayed her inner turmoil. Her trembling hands betrayed the immense burden of having to choose between her daughter's actions and her wedding day. I could no longer stand by and watch as everyone dealt with Alicia's disaster. Consequently, I went to the restroom on my own. My eyes welled up with tears the second I slammed the door behind me and caught sight of my reflection in the mirror. Someone had clearly used a chainsaw on my hair. It was unkempt and uneven, and a large chunk was missing. As I sobbed into my hands, I released all the shock that had been building up inside of me, sitting on the locked toilet seat. A woman's voice inquired whether she had arrived at the correct location as a soft rap on the door rang. According to her, David had summoned her as a hair emergency stylist, and her name was Megan Hicks. I lost all self-control, and sobbed more at her mercy and the gentle way she spoke through the door. As she beheld the destruction, I opened the door and welcomed her inside, observing her professional grin waver. Right away, she began to run her fingers through my hair to assess its condition. She pulled out a set of scissors and other styling equipment from her case, and assured me that she could make it work, saying that she had fixed worse. As she began to smooth out the corners, I could make out the rising volume of conversations in the main room. As my dad's voice echoed through the door, he informed Alicia that her actions were totally unacceptable, and that she had revealed her true character to everyone. Then came Alicia's dramatic tears, which seemed more like acting than genuine grief. Without mentioning the unfolding events outside, Megan continued to work diligently, molding the remnants of my hair into a purposeful rather than an aggressive style. When I was ready, Albert came knocking on the door of the restroom to tell me he needed to talk to me. After Megan informed him that we required an additional 10 minutes, he decided to wait outside with his supervisor, who had just shown up. Her short pixie cut turned out really well, especially considering her starting point, because she worked quickly but meticulously. Once again, the door swung wide, and an elderly guy dressed similarly to the security guard escorted Albert inside, introducing himself as his boss. Albert informed me that I needed to sign the documents now in order to press charges, and they had papers in their hands. There was a strict policy of zero tolerance for violence on the premises, he added, and the hotel treated assault extremely seriously. According to the supervisor, Alicia might be arrested today since the evidence they have is sure to stick. Even though I knew it would take place at my dad's wedding, I nevertheless grabbed up the pen anyhow. The decision felt monumental. My stepmother's voice, which was both clear and powerful and full of emotion, resounded through the bathroom door. She made the announcement that the ceremony, which would be limited to immediate family only, would go ahead in 45 minutes. They needed more time to reschedule everything, so the reception was put off forever. She became increasingly angry as she informed Alicia that she would not be serving in any capacity during the ceremony, including as a bridesmaid. The subsequent hush was heavy with the imminent arrival of repercussions. Rachel politely requested to use the restroom for a moment by tapping on the door. With a nod from me, she quietly made her way inside to observe Megan smoothing down the rough patches in my hair. She paused, toying with her phone, before apologizing for her role in allowing Alicia to continue when things escalated. She did concede that everyone was aware of Alicia's cruel side, but none had anticipated her to resort to such extreme measures with the scissors and champagne. I could tell she was really distressed by the events since her hands quivered while she spoke. With her thinning shears, Megan continued to progressively combine the shorter bits into something that appeared purposeful. The family attorney's voice came through when my dad's phone began buzzing, so he answered it and placed it on speaker. While everything is still vivid in my mind, the attorney advised me to capture everything immediately. He suggested I document the red mark on my palm from when Alicia stomped on me, as well as the scuffed dress and my mother's tarnished pearls, in photographs. As the lawyer emphasized the urgent need for written testimonies from all witnesses, my dad whipped out his phone and began snapping photos of my hand and the champagne stains. We could make out Alicia's rising voice as she spoke to her mom through the door. "I failed to immediately identify myself to her," she claimed, "and now she blames me for everything. She said I wanted her to look awful at the wedding, so I let her humiliate herself on purpose." Her accusation that I was deceptive and plotting to destroy her bond with her mother caused her voice to grow increasingly strident. Telling Alicia to quit making excuses for assault, my stepmother's voice was icy and piercing. David, clutching his tablet, stood anxiously at the door to the restroom. He mentioned that a number of people on the lower level had observed the security detail and were inquiring about the holdup. He wanted to know what to say to the individuals who were becoming afraid that something catastrophic had happened so he could contain the situation. The manager of the hotel came over to see how we were doing and to make sure we had all the necessities. The manager's worries regarding the hotel's image were voiced by David. Albert returned with additional details regarding the charges in the event that word spread about an attack in the penthouse suite. In his view, the use of scissors as a weapon constituted an attack with a lethal weapon, significantly more dangerous than a mere battery. A conviction could result in a prison sentence rather than merely community service or probation. When Alicia's sobbing abruptly ceased, the main room fell still, as if she had heard him. With her phone in one hand, Emma approached Albert and began copying the footage she had captured to his tablet. To observe it, we were all crowded around. The film showed every humiliating moment, from Alicia spilling my bag to spraying me with champagne to chopping my hair with the scissors, even though I truly didn't want to see it again. With her hand covering her mouth, my stepmother observed for almost 30 seconds before she was compelled to exit the room. Compared to hearing about it, seeing her daughter assault me on film was a whole new ballgame. Following our viewing of the footage, the attorney's voice resurfaced on the phone's speaker. His reasoning was as follows. With this kind of evidence, plus multiple witnesses, criminal charges would definitely stick if we pursued them. He went on to say that we could file a civil claim for emotional anguish and property damage in addition to the criminal case. Everyone around Alicia thought she needed to sit down because her breathing became so rapid that she would pass out. No matter what I decided regarding pressing charges, Alicia was no longer welcome in our home, my dad told me as he turned to me. She had proven she couldn't be trusted in my presence, and he said that true family members don't behave in this manner. He had an incredibly aggressive and forceful voice that I had never heard before. Even though my stepmother returned to the room with tears streaming down her cheeks, she refrained from challenging his choice. After David cleared his throat, he announced that he had successfully rescheduled the event to include just his closest relatives and friends. There would be no way to go ahead with the lavish reception that was supposed to include 200 people. The total amount of almost $30,000 was lost due to the catering, the band and the flowers for 200 people, as shown on his tablet. By this point, it was too late to get a refund on anything. Despite her pale complexion caused by the financial loss, my stepmother only nodded to indicate that she understood. Megan took a step back and gave me a mirror so I could check her work on my hair. She had given the hack job a short pixie cut, which, although not exactly what I had envisioned for the wedding, turned out really cute. She styled the remaining length with product to provide texture, even though the sides were extremely short. Using the remnants of Alicia's attack, she had performed real magic. After everything that had happened, this simple gesture of kindness hit me so hard that I began to cry as I thanked her. She gave me a shoulder rub and then began to gather her equipment, expressing her gratitude for being able to turn a negative into a positive. Albert began to show me my choices on his iPad as everyone looked on. Alicia might be detained before the ceremony if I press charges now. A warrant would not be necessary for my filing of a report for documentation purposes. The hotel could preserve their proof, and I could treat it as a family problem. He was very clear that the hotel had sufficient proof notwithstanding my choice. Multiple angles of view were captured by the security cameras. And there was Sophia's video as well. As Albert spoke, Elysia sat on the couch, her hands covering her head. I overheard Rachel speaking as she drew nearer to Emma. They should depart immediately, she remarked. This wasn't their problem, and they didn't need to get involved. They were witnesses, Ciara shook her head and remarked, and they had an obligation to act morally. Rachel snatched her pocketbook and refused to be sent to court over this, she insisted. Thinking about what Elysia did to me with those scissors should be her motivation, Ciara informed her. As we watched, their bond was crumbling. My stepmother re-entered the room, appearing calmer this time, but with crimson eyes. Without hesitation, she approached me and firmly grasped my hands. She assured me that she would stand by my decision to bring charges. Elysia, she said, had never before been held accountable for her actions. When she suggested that this could be just what her kid needed, her voice quivered. Somehow, she appeared older, as if the burden of her motherhood shortcomings had accelerated her aging process. I inquired as to whether Elysia may remain at the hotel before informing Albert that I intended to submit a police report. Before the ceremony, I preferred not to have her apprehended and removed. Albert phoned his boss and confirmed that they could work things out. It would be necessary for Elysia to remain in a separate room under the observation of the hotel security. It was more generous than the tenderness she displayed while she was trimming my hair. My face was covered in tears as the makeup artist arrived and began applying the finishing touches. In order to retrieve my alternate dress, my dad retrieved it from his vehicle in the parking garage. The one that had been soaked in champagne was utterly spoiled and had an alcoholic odor to it. I was essentially beginning all over, but no one seemed to notice. Megan wasted little time repairing my cosmetics while David continued to field calls. Elysia nodded without raising an eyebrow as Albert walked her through the definitions. In lieu of an immediate trip to the station, she consented to the monitored isolation. She was escorted by 2 security officers to a second-floor, smaller office. Gradually she rose to her feet and cast a final glance at her mother. Although my stepmother's expression was one of desperation and pleading, she only nodded. Quietly, Elysia trailed behind the guards as they departed. David brought over his phone and showed me the most recent timeline. The downstairs guests were becoming increasingly impatient and wanted to know why there had been a delay. A small medical issue had been reported, but he assured them that everything was under control. He claimed that at this moment, nobody needed further drama caused by the truth. Already some of the attendees were taking to social media to express their confusion. At David's direction, his helper kept an eye on the posts to prevent any leaks. Sitting down beside me, my stepmother waited for Megan to apply my final coat of cosmetics. After everything, she wanted to know if I still desired the role of maid of honor. Because Elysia also couldn't take that away from me, I told her yes. In a tight embrace, she mumbled an apology for her daughter's actions as she embraced me. According to her, she ought to have anticipated this and taken action earlier. Because I was at a loss for words, I simply returned her embrace. The 30-minute ceremony, which had been altered, was about to begin. Assisting my stepmother with the finishing touches to her bridal gown and veil was my honor. Elysia and our plans for the future were not discussed. Following all the mayhem, the relative quiet felt both strange and essential. My dad returned with a simpler dress to replace the one that got ruined. Rather than the purple one that had been bathed in champagne, it was navy blue. As I changed behind a screen in the corner, everyone else turned their backs on me. Even though it wasn't my original intention, the new garment fit perfectly. At the desk, Rachel and Emma were handing Albert their written statements. From beginning to end, they recorded what they witnessed. In order to have the documents officially recorded, Albert had them sign and date them. After Rachel finished first, she departed without bidding farewell to anyone. Just before she departed, Sophia walked over to me and gave me a firm squeeze. She expressed her utmost regret for all that had transpired in a hushed tone. While Elysia had always been cruel, she said it had never been this severe. Elysia felt like she had forgotten about yet another consequence when they left. After checking his watch, David announced that we must immediately descend to the ceremony site, lest we lose the venue altogether. David made a few last-minute modifications to my stepmother's veil as we made our way downstairs, and my dad held my arm the whole way. Instead of the 200 seats they had prepared, the room for the event appeared enormous, with only 20 people spread out in the front rows. As I stood holding the bouquet for his bride, my dad couldn't help but glance across at me every few seconds. The strange and silent atmosphere was intensified by the vacant spaces where Elysia and the bridesmaids ought to have stood. My stepmother's voice quivered and she had to pause as she vowed to mix our families with love and respect as the officiant began the ceremony. Even though she was unaware of what had transpired upstairs, I witnessed my aunt using a tissue to dab her eyes. Without the readings and special music that had been scheduled, the event came to a swift end. Everyone seemed awkward and uncomfortable as we snapped a few shots. Albert discreetly informed us that Alicia had been escorted to the police station for processing as the photographer was finishing up. Without more inquiry, my stepmother only nodded and averted her gaze. Due to the cancellation of the large reception, we had dinner at the hotel restaurant with the relatives who had stayed. As they took their plates, the group engaged in idle chatter over the day's weather and traffic. My dad held onto my hand the entire time we were eating and squeezed it whenever anyone inquired about Alicia. My stepmother summoned me to the hallway for a little moment after supper. She gave me a check and said it would pay for everything: the dress, treatment, my mom's necklace that needed fixing, and any medical fees I could incur. Another thing she mentioned was that she should have known her daughter's actions would lead to this, and that she was sorry for everything. We both knew that wasn't entirely accurate, but I still took the money and told her it wasn't her fault. A prosecutor reviewed all of the evidence Albert had gathered 2 days later as I sat in a cramped downtown office. She played a video that had been recorded on Olivia's phone and displayed images of my hand and freshly chopped hair. She detailed how assault and battery charges would appear on Alicia's permanent record. The prosecution stated that, given the presence of witnesses and video evidence, Alicia would likely be sentenced to probation and community service, considering this was her initial violation. If I wanted to pursue more severe charges, she wanted to know if I was fine with that. I wanted this to end, so I said probation would be good. In a plea deal, Alicia agreed to take anger management courses and avoid me for 2 years. Her lawyer contacted me the following week to discuss the details. She was unable to attend any family gatherings I attended or get in touch with me because of the restraining order. It would be more cumbersome to cope with a trial, so I consented. After some time had passed, my stepmother contacted me to inform me that she and Alicia had enrolled in family therapy. According to her, they required professional assistance once she realized she had allowed Alicia to get away with too much for too long. According to what she told me, Alicia's cruel behavior didn't emerge out of nowhere, and she blamed herself for not intervening sooner. My hair had grown out to a point where the stylist could style it into a more natural style 3 weeks following the wedding. Despite the jeweler fixing my mom's pearl necklace, I could still make out tiny scratches when the light hit them in certain angles. Even though my hand had fully healed, there were moments when I could still feel the ghostly pressure of Alicia's sneaker. Even if my physical health was improving, I couldn't stop dreaming about being a prisoner in that suite, as onlookers made fun of me. On Tuesdays, my dad began treating me to a romantic meal out by myself. When we went out to eat, he would choose spots far from any potential acquaintances. Apart from the wedding, we would discuss anything and everything. He assured me one night that he was pleased with my handling of the situation, and that Alicia would never set foot in my presence again. He assured his wife that he would see to it, even if it meant skipping a few vacations together. He said that he should have recognized something was off when Alicia refused to meet with me before the wedding, and that he should have done a better job of protecting me. The feeling of having my dad around again, free from the strife in my step-family, made these dinners the highlight of my week. I received frequent reports from my stepmother regarding Alicia's progress in therapy and her community service at a homeless shelter. According to her, Alicia was beginning to grasp the concept of consequences and realize how foolish she had been. Even though I didn't answer any of her texts, I also didn't block her phone. I wished Alicia would change for the better, but more, I wished she would vanish from my life. It had only been a few weeks since the wedding, yet it felt like ages had passed. Our entire family has changed their behavior recently. We are all much more reserved and watchful now. There was never any true formation of the family we were meant to become at that wedding. What happened instead was that we transformed into a fractured entity that each of us was attempting to reconcile with. Notifications began flooding my phone, which was the first indicator that things were getting worse. Someone uploaded the security tape of the wedding disaster, despite David's best efforts to keep it under wraps. In a few hours, footage of Alicia snipping my hair with scissors had gone viral. Sending links and checking in to see how I was doing were people I hadn't spoken to in years. Every possible name was thrown at Alicia in the comment section of the videos. The expression on her face when my stepmother said my name was so startled that it became a meme. Outside of communicating with close relatives, I disabled all of my social media accounts and reduced my phone use. Until I began having lunch at my desk, my coworkers would bring it up during lunch. A warning about the dangers of wedding violence was broadcasted by the local news after they took up the tale. As the teenager who brutally assaulted her stepsister with scissors, Alicia's visage became a household name. Without my asking, my stepmother began texting me updates every few days. According to her, Alicia was volunteering at a downtown shelter for the homeless. According to her, the judge ordered her to work there for 6 months, 3 days a week. Images of Alicia preparing meals and clearing tables were included in her message. Alicia was learning the face of actual problems, she stated in her lengthy notes. Upon witnessing homeless families with children for the first time, Alicia reportedly broke down in tears. Despite reading each and every message, I never responded. I was curious if there were real repercussions for her. I wanted to deny her existence for a while. A substantial package came from Alicia's attorney 6 weeks subsequent to the nuptials. There was a 3-page letter written by Alicia within. She detailed her childhood feelings of envy, as she detailed how her mom showered attention on others. She confessed that she had been cruel to many others prior to me. I told her she should never have to see me again since she was ashamed of her behavior, and she replied she understood. She refused to assign responsibility or make excuses. She merely expressed remorse and stated her intention to improve herself. After giving it 2 readings, I tossed it into a drawer. Even though I wasn't prepared to forgive, I did see that she had made an effort. A month down the road, my stepmother kindly requested that we have lunch together. We sought for a secluded area outside of town, away from prying eyes. She appeared weary and older, yet her face lit up with a smile upon seeing me. At first, we stuck to safe subjects, like the weather and our jobs. Subsequently, she informed me that she had also been attending therapy in order to comprehend how she had brought up as someone capable of such brutality. It dawned on her that instead of educating Alicia the repercussions of her actions, she had always found a reason to shield her. Neither did she ever once suggest we speak to or ask me to forgive Alicia. One lunch at a time, she worked on regaining my trust. As our meeting frequency increased to every 2 weeks, things began to settle down. Dad made arrangements to have his birthday meal at his preferred steakhouse 3 months subsequent to the wedding. Sitting alone at a corner table were only he, my stepmother and I. Neither Alicia nor her absence were brought up by anyone. After sharing dessert, we cracked up at Dad's terrible jokes. In exchange for his concert tickets, my stepmother gave him a watch. For the first time since the wedding, it felt like a genuine family supper. We all got in the shots, and it was clear that everyone was having a great time. It seemed like that night proved we could manage without Alicia. My stepmother contacted me a few weeks later to inform me that Alicia had completed the therapy program. According to her, Alicia wanted to personally apologize and make amends. Following a day of contemplation, I returned the call. I expressed my gratitude that Alicia was receiving assistance, but I said that I was not yet prepared to meet with her. Apologies won't solve everything. According to my stepmother, she got it and promised not to bring it up again. She never pressured me or broke her promise. In a formal letter, the hotel expressed its regret for the security lapse and the distress it caused. They also offered to foot the bill for a whole year of therapy. A personal phone call from Albert inquired about my well-being. According to him, the hotel's procedures were revised in light of the incident. On my birthday, he gave me flowers and a card wishing me a speedy recovery. Our whole wedding bill was covered by the management as a gesture of apology. More people benefited than these random acts of generosity would have them believe. I felt completely normal again 6 months after that terrible day. It appeared like Dad and my stepmother emerged from the conflict stronger than before. Their communication had improved, and they had established healthy limits. I had become accustomed to taking precautions and no longer felt bad about it. From afar, Alicia continued to get assistance. After that wedding, we were all much better off. Our intended family never materialized, but the one we created was genuine and authentic.